lots of elephants, lots of giraffes. I had elephants like walk by my rooftop tents. I had an old Hannibal rooftop tent back in the day.
Yeah.
I had like baboons on it. I woke up with giraffes eating right by us. I think one of the places we stayed had a pet giraffe, and you could feed it. It was really wild. Like it was a juvenile too. So it wasn't, it was only like 20 feet tall or something. It's a UK military vehicle that came out of service in 2007. It's just slow going because you are moving a 10-ton truck, which is 22,000 pounds.
Warning. The 4x4 Canada podcast contains discussion about exploring mountains, camping beside lakes, and enjoying the outdoors. Guests also talk about jumping race trucks side by side, racing 1,000 horsepower rigs across mud pits, and jumping monster trucks over stacks of buses. None of this is for the faint of heart. The 4x4 Canada podcast is not responsible for bringing out your inner adrenaline junkie or making you want to get out there and explore the back roads from coast to coast. The 4x4 Canada podcast is not responsible for broken parts due to jumping your vehicle, hitting mud poles too hard, crossing deep streams, and doing other dumb shit. However, we will take credit for inspiring you to explore mountaintops, spend quality time outdoors with your friends, or meeting new like-minded people, and most importantly of all, following your dreams.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for 4x4 podcast. I'm Trisha, your host for tonight. And today I have...
I'm Wes, your other host.
And I'm Nick from Bucky Overland, joining Trisha and Wes today.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us tonight, Nick. I know it's late over there, and Trisha as well. We're recording this. It's like 10 o'clock back in the homeland there. And we'll get into Bucky Overland in this second, because you have such a unique rig that's so unique to Canada. It is really interesting. Folks can reach you at Bucky Overland on Instagram. We'll throw that up in the show notes as well. And we're really excited to learn more about your rig and your travels in Ontario, Quebec, and that. Before we hop into that, I do want to mention that I was at BC Overland Rally this past weekend, and it was a great time. It was really windy. Everybody that was there realizes how windy it was. I mean, I know that I saw Dorothy and Toto fly by a few times, and I've got to do a real deep clean on all the sand this weekend, but it was cool. It was really neat. Met up a few guys, Skyward Overland. We had a couple beers there with them, and lots of, actually I had a few beers with a lot of people, but it was really neat. It was a great event, and I am looking forward to the next one, hoping it's at a different location. So I think a lot of other people are, and talking to Ray afterwards, and he's looking for another location. So the next event coming up in Western Canada, well, big event anyways, is the Alberta Outdoor Adventure Expo. I spent a lot of time with Dave from Blind Man Overland this weekend, and also Yucca Campers. And he's one of the organizers as well of the Alberta Outdoor Adventure Expo. That's the long weekend in September. And that is, I believe, just outside of Edson, Alberta. Super great rates, $50 for the weekend, or $20 or $25 for a day pass. And it's like an hour from Edmonton. So I'm really working on hitting that event if I can. And Trisha, I know there's a couple of events happening in Ontario coming up. You've got the Jeep show coming up this weekend, which I don't think you're going to be able to make by the sounds of it. You might be able to, but maybe you can let our listeners know. Actually, by the time this does get released, it'll be after the Jeep show. But what else? You got the Jeep show coming up this weekend. What else is coming up in Ontario?
So there's that, the Canada Jeep show. There's a few show and shines coming up. And then we also have Overlandeth, the rally will be coming up in the fall by the Overlandeth group. So I'm probably going to that one for sure, and hopefully spending the weekend there.
Cool.
Out in Muskoka. So looking forward to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Nick's sitting there nodding his head. He's like, yeah. The North events are incredible from what I've heard.
Yeah.
They do a great job. I've been supporting Overland North for a while now. I mean, that's probably how you got to know me or whatever, through my being a guest speaker, or supposed to be a guest speaker, which I wasn't able to attend at the gathering. But I am aiming to go to the rally if I can, if everything aligns. There's a lot of, life that has to happen. But they do a great event, and they're just really genuine to the Overland community, and they're a group of guys, really good, solid group of guys that really just want to grow the community. Overlanding, as you guys know, has been growing exponentially over the last 5 to 7 years here in North America. And they saw a need north of the border that there was not that many events on the eastern side. And they were kind of just taking that and running with it. And I think they're doing a great job.
Yeah, definitely sounds like, they started three years ago or something like that. And they're up to 3 events a year now. And everything I've heard about them has been positive. Trisha went to her first Overland North event here a couple months ago, and she's hooked.
Yeah. I was like, okay, G people don't have anything on these guys and their equipment and their rigs. I'm like, okay, this is a whole other level of rigs here. So yeah, it was definitely interesting and eye opener. And you're right, the group of guys there, like everyone that was there, so friendly, and just like the environment's great, and able to chat with anybody. Literally they would just come up to me and chat and go up to anyone and chat. So it was really good. It was a good time.
I like how it's not platform specific.
Yeah.
Like you're not just a Jeep crew, like there's a lot of meetups here in Ottawa. I'm from Ottawa, if anyone doesn't know. And there's some meetups, and I've gone to them, and they just end up kind of being a Jeep meetup, which is fine. Like I got nothing against that. It's just, it is very kind of Jeeps and Jeeps only. And then I think they've been trying and getting a few more Toyotas and there and starting to like kind of grow the community and understand that overlanding just isn't about off-roading and Jeeps and that, that part of it, but it's all about the experience and adventure, so.
Exactly. I mean, there's everybody from dual sport motorcycle riders to Subaru guys with a rooftop tent to, Jeep people and Toyota people. And then there's people with behemoths like your vehicle, which we'll get into in a second. So if anybody's going to the Overland North event in Huntsville, Hearst Resort on September 15th, 16th.
Yeah, it's 15th, 16th, 17th, I think.
Yeah. So if you guys want to listen to the interview, and if you want to learn more about Nick and his rig, just look for the biggest rig there. And that'll be Nick. So
usually it's one of the bigger ones for sure. I think I'm working with Overland North, like obviously supporting them. I'm not part of their group, but I believe in what they're doing. And I'm trying to get more big rigs, which I know you've got some questions later on, but some big rigs to come to the events and kind of bring it's a bit of an attraction because people don't get to see those every day. They're kind of unique, as we're talking today about the rig, and we're trying to just grow the community. And it's just nice to people so they can see that you can have, I'll say it's a big rig. Not many RVs have 50-inch tires all the way down to, like you said, you got dual sports and you got motocross bikes that are just going out with panniers and they're really roughing it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I will say one thing about the BC Overland Rally. There was 3 or 4 big rigs there. There was a big 6x6. And I didn't quite catch what it was, but there was actually a couple, I think about 4 big rigs, but one of them was a Mercedes 6x6. I'm going to say 70s, 80s, something like that. And it was sort of a green and blue really neat looking rig, but they actually gave a talk on Saturday night about their adventures. And that's one of the things, I'm sure the Overland North does the same thing, but BC Overland Rally, they had people talking about doing overlanding in everywhere from, Alaska down to Argentina at the bottom. And Dan from the Road Shows Me, he's been around Africa and around Australia and that. But one of the guest speakers on Saturday night, they talked about their adventures and they've been overlanding all around the world. I unfortunately missed that one because I was busy bullshitting in camp.
Drinking beer.
Drinking beer and realized, oh crap, it's almost time for the free giveaways. So we made a mad rush to there, right? But I'm sure that the Overland North Rally is the same way, where they have some really neat guest speakers talking about their adventures and that.
Like last year, I was a guest speaker and I gave a talk on my 2010 trip through Africa. So I started in Cape Town and drove all the way through Africa back to Europe in an old Toyota Hilux. And so not the truck I have now, but a previous vehicle that I had built and drove. So they do encourage that. It's the stories and some workshops, it's everything from where did people go to what did they build and how did they do it? So.
Yeah. And that's one thing I found really interesting. Like Dan from the Road Shows Me, he's a very famous person. He did the Alaska to Argentina, tip Argentina in a stock Jeep TJ. Like a stock with 30-inch tires, no winch, soft top, and he slept in the back kind of idea, right? But he was just genuine. People go up to him and talk to him, and people ask him questions during his speech, and it was really great. And I'm sure it's the same way the Overland North rallies. It's funny, speaking of big vehicles, my brother sent me a picture of his neighbor selling his truck, and it's a man truck. And who is it? It's Ferris Outbound on Instagram. He said, this is the guy's Instagram. And yeah, he's selling a really nice man truck. And I'm like, oh.
Is it built yet, or is it just
It's
truck?
built.
Oh, it's built.
Wow. Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah. So yeah, really, really nice looking rigs. So, but let's get back to you. Let's get back to Bucky Overland. Sorry, we got a little sidetracked.
It's okay. It's okay. I love all things Overland.
We have a habit of doing that sometimes. So I love the vehicle, but we want to learn a little bit more about you before we get into this really unique vehicle, or unique in Canada vehicle, I should say.
Yeah.
So we want a little bit about you and your background and what led you to Bucky Overland.
I love vehicles with names. So your rig is named Bucky the Truck. So where did it come from?
Okay, so the kids named the truck. That's the first, the high, if I give you the simple answer, but it remained nameless for many years because when I built the truck, in fact, when I started building the truck, my son wasn't even born and my daughter was just born. Okay. And I literally had to change my layout because I knew I was having two kids. So now I needed bunk. So I literally had to change the configuration a few times. So it remained nameless until 28. We took a trip to Texas. And the kids, we pulled into a gas station. I don't know if you've ever heard of Bucky's, the gas station, but it's a gigantic, you've never seen before gas station, 200 pumps.
What?
Yeah, 200 pumps. And you pay, when you go into the convenience store, it's like a Walmart. They sell hunting gear and they sell like paintings for the wall and like pajamas and all kinds of things.
Texas.
It's very Texas. And the kids were just like, this is the biggest gas station. And it's kind of like the truck is the biggest thing. And it's like Bucky. Yeah. And I'm like, so we kind of, had the kids and they're like, yeah, it's like Bucky. So it became Bucky the Truck. And that's where we started the Instagram because we actually had a name to go with. And so there's a couple aspects of Bucky. So Bucky we spell it differently than the gas station. And the name in South Africa, if you say Bucky, it means truck. It's for a pickup truck, not a big truck like mine, but it's Bucky is kind of the South African, and South Africans are really into overlanding. So it was kind of it had multiple meanings. And so this Bucky the Truck was born. So that's how it worked.
That is awesome though. That the fact that it was a kid and it's kind of a funny story as well too, right? So,
yeah.
That is awesome.
The kids love the truck. They climb all over it. They love the fact that I've got photos of them when they're literally this big. And they can stand in their beds, which they can only crawl into now, but they could stand in their beds and before it was finished. And I think I sent you some photos, Wes, of one of the pictures of my daughter in front of the truck in the background with a tarp over it because it was literally not even watertight at the time when I started building it. And that was in the UK where I built it, which we can get into more about the truck was built.
Yeah, let's talk back. You've been all around the world. It sounds like, just in our brief conversations, it sounds like you've traveled a lot. Did you grow up in a camping and exploring family, or is this something that came later on?
So my family was always big on camping. I'm half Chinese. If you see my name, I'm Nicholas Yu. So I'm actually half Chinese, even though I don't look it. For anyone that's not seeing me on the podcast, I do not look Chinese, and I get that all the time. So my dad's half Chinese, and so a lot of them are over in Hong Kong or in other places. So I didn't. But my mom's side is from Northern Ontario, kind of Grey Bruce area. And so we'd go up there to Tobermory and the Sauble beaches and all that kind of stuff. And I'd spend my summers there. And that was always heavy on the, maybe not camping traditionally per se, but definitely in a trailer, campfires, s'mores, all that kind of good stuff, cabins, all that kind of good stuff. And I have a lot of family there. So we always explored, but locally and in, let's say, tents and trailers, not overland rigs like we know today.
So you mentioned earlier that you had done some traveling around South Africa and
all of Africa. Yeah.
All of Africa. Okay, let's hop right into that before we get into Bucky the Truck.
Okay.
And you're in a Hilux at that time, you said, right?
I was in an old 88 solid front axle Hilux, which did the job amazingly, actually. Yeah. Little thing that didn't have a lot of power, but just had great suspension, solid suspension with a solid axle. And it just worked. It just never quit, even though I think it needed a whole valve train rebuild, a head rebuild by the time it was done. Because the truck that I actually bought believe it or not, I had already done 2 trips in Africa. Yeah. And then I bought it.
How did you end up from Northern Ontario in South Africa and traveling around Africa? Like,
oh gosh, this is a long story, but I'll try and shorten it for you. So I went to England with an ex-partner that we went to England, started exploring, kind of part of the adventure, get a job. And part of it was you start hearing about people traveling, and they had like Europe has a very solid overland community. Even back in like, the mid 2000s, they had a very good overland community. And so you hear about these journeys and stories and people doing all these trips. And so it kind of gave you the idea of what to do. And then you meet a lot of South Africans, which I have a lot of South African friends in Europe, and they're all like, yeah, you should come down. We do camping. We love these trucks. And so, through exposure, which I didn't get in Canada, we just didn't get that. They just don't have that culture of not yet. It's coming, but it's not yet of coming, and it's coming now. And so we ended up picking up a truck in South Africa, kitting it out a little bit. It was already pretty well done, but kitting it out and driving it back to England and then selling it, because it was the only way I could fund it at the time. Like, I'd love to keep the truck, but you just can't keep them all. So
South Africa is a real hotbed. South Africa and Australia are real sort of, I'm going to suggest, the beginnings of what we call overlanding these days. So, I mean, South Africa has been a hotbed of that for a number of years. We've got some guests coming up from a company in Red Deer, Alberta. They're South African people, and they have a store called Gear for Overland. And I've dealt with them a lot of times, but they've got some really neat products that are just right from South Africa, right? Like there's a lot. There's, Front Runner, there's Illumicab, there's all kinds of different great companies coming out of South Africa that, like I say, it's one of the birthplaces of overlanding. So
I would probably almost argue, I know the Australians might hit me for this, but I'd say it's probably the birthplace. From what I know, I've been to Australia. I've done kind of overlanding in not so much traditional 4x4. I've done it in like a little Camry, but in South Africa is like, it's like a whole other level. Like back then, I'm talking like almost 15 years ago now, like maybe even in Australia 20 years ago. So yes, I'm dating myself here a little bit, but Anyway, I think that both cultures overland and they're very into it. So
yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot of great product come out of there, and I would love to travel either one of those countries, as I'm sure you would as well, Tricia.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm still kind of in shock about traveling Africa for a little guy out of Northern Ontario kind of idea, right? Like that. And going from, say London or wherever we were in the UK, that must have been one hell of a trip. There's culture shock, but just a totally different world. Can really,
It is a different world. You definitely have like this sense of I don't know how to say it, like culture shock, when you get there. And in South Africa at the time, I've just recently talked to a South African and it's gotten better, but at the time it was pretty rough. So when you arrive, there's gates and bars and like electric fences and they're like, don't do this and don't do that. And like, don't stop at this stop sign. And you're just like, whoa, hang on a second. This is so foreign to me. Right. Like, And so, we were very cautious. We took every step. We took a lot of advice from locals. We were new. Like, I don't think we had really done that extreme of overlanding. We kind of just jumped in and thought, we're going to do this and try it. And once you left kind of South Africa, Namibia and Botswana, all the way up Mozambique, and then we all went up the west side, not the east.
Okay.
The east side, not the west. Sorry.
So you went up through Egypt kind of idea and then into around to Turkey and over
Syria.
Kind of
so I actually went through Syria, like the year the war started.
Oh my God.
Yeah. We got through and we were okay. We actually spent like a few weeks there. And it was not a problem. I got to see all of the ruins. Like ISIS has actually destroyed a lot of stuff that I got to see. I got pictures of, which is great. Like I feel very sad that they destroyed some of those monuments because there was some really good Roman architecture that was left over. And then I had friends travel. So we traveled in like, let's say March, April, let's just sometime in there.
Yep.
And we had friends travel in November and they said they were given one day to transit through the whole country. And they said, because they knew that things were not very good. They gave them one. And then like, as you know, I think it was 2011, the war started and then that's kind of, it was over, right? Travel through there has been pretty tough. So yeah, so I got to do it before that, which was nice.
Very lucky.
Very lucky. Yeah.
Street food. Every country has this great street food. I know this is going back 10 years ago, but can you remember some of your favorite street food from that Africa trip?
Some of the stuff I really liked, I went to Zanzibar, which I couldn't take my rig over there. That was one of the times I had to like take a ferry over not with my rig and kind of like stay in a hostel kind of thing and do a little experience. But they had these cool like pancakes that you could get all kinds of stuff. And it could be like savory or sweet. Like you could get like a, meat or like Nutella and banana kind of thing, like almost like a crepe. That sticks out in my mind. That was really, really good. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say the food in Africa was a super like highlight, generally, but so I don't want to get roasted for that. But, there's some cool things. And that one sticks out to me is that I don't know what they call them anymore. It's been a while, but I'm sure we can Google it and find out. But these like pancakes, like almost like a crepe type thing in Zanzibar. And that was amazing. And again, I don't know, I'm sure Dan said is as long as it's busy and locals are buying it, it's fine. Like you'll be fine. You'll be okay. It may not taste great or whatever, but you won't get sick. So,
yeah. So did you happen to get sick through any of that? Because I know water can always be a bit of an issue, as well as not being used to certain foods and stuff like that.
I don't have any crazy stories for myself. I can tell you, I don't want to get too much into it because it's not my story to tell, except that my partner did get very sick at the time. She in Egypt, I don't know I think food poisoning is quite common there, just looking at the way they handle the food and they prepare the food. And I hear that happens a lot, like from a lot of UK tourists that go down there. They're like, yeah, Egypt's kind of, they got to be careful about what you eat and stuff. And sure enough, she got bit by some sort of a bug there, but I won't get into too many graphic details.
Did you get to see the pyramids?
Yes, I got to drive right by them. I got a great photo. I'll send you a photo after. It's this great photo of me and my then partner just parked with our Hilux hanging off the side, and they just see two pyramids on either side. And I don't know which pyramids they are. That's so bad. It's a memory. That is definitely a memory. Like, Egypt is pretty wild. The driving is very wild too.
I bet. So, and everybody's favorite animals, the elephants and the giraffes. You got to see lots of those?
Lots of elephants, lots of giraffes. I had elephants like walk by my rooftop tents. I had an old Hannibal rooftop tent back in the day. Yeah. I had like baboons on it. I woke up with giraffes eating right by us. I think one of the places we stayed had a pet giraffe, and you could feed it. It was really wild. Like it was a juvenile too. So it wasn't, he was only like 20 feet tall or something, right? Like, and he'd come down and you could feed him some food, and he was just like super gentle and just want to stand next to you. That was a bizarre trip. That was in Namibia, and that was a bizarre moment. It's like when you've got this little juvenile giraffe just kind of chilling out with you, like.
That's awesome.
We have pet calves here and pet horses, and they've got the giraffes over there, right? So what do you think, Tricia? You ready to head to Africa?
I would. Actually, we're thinking about going to South Africa or Australia. I really want to do Australia. Not overlanding, but just to visit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's these times, not sure too much about South Africa, just like the stuff that Nick said too. I don't know if it's the same right now, as in like for traveling for foreigners, but either that or Australia is kind of what I wanted to do next.
Yeah. In both cases, they've got like, even today, I know back then, so I'm talking like 15 years, 20 years ago, they were pretty set up for all that. They have, you can rock up there, rent a 4x4 with rooftop tent, all the stuff you need, and you can go on an adventure. Like it's amazing how well like the system is built for that kind of stuff.
What kind of terrain is up there between, I guess, going through South Africa and then going through Egypt must be more desert, sand. But what was like mostly the terrain that you were driving through?
Oh gosh, it was everything.
Everything?
Doing miles of deep sand, like miles and miles of deep sand. Fuel economy was really bad that day, like doing like 200 kilometers of deep sand ruts where you can't even really get out of them. Like you're kind of stuck in a way and you don't want to turn around. Anyway, rocky. Namibia had some really sketchy, I can send you a video. It's really sketchy rock descents. And remind you, I had never done 4-wheel driving before this. Okay. So like I learned through videos. I don't know if you've ever seen Andrew St. Pierre White. He's he's been doing it for ages. at the time, he was like one of the first guys that was putting on these 4x4 shows. And so I was watching that and him testing out rigs and doing stuff. And I learned my overlanding experience through him and literally rocked up and like, okay, we're in a Hilux. Let's see what this does. I've been into like more race cars before. Like I built a lot of cars before. So I was into mechanics, but not like fast cars, lowered and like more like track cars. And then I get to like where I'm off the ground and I'm like, did I just hit a curve? That's so like how did that, where it's just destroy a car that I would normally build, right? So I was learning as I was going. The terrain was everything, like mountainous, like Egypt's got Egypt's a lot of sand. Syria's got a lot of sand. There's a lot of sand driving. Ethiopia is like very mountainous and green and a lot of mud. Yeah, it's just, there's everything.
And that's opposite of what we've been led to believe in North America, looking at this, the UNICEF videos and stuff like that. They always show it, the worst of the worst, right? That we're always shown to be desert kind of idea, but there's rainforests and all kinds of stuff there, right?
There's high rainforests. There's like low valleys. There's lots of great waterfalls. Like I didn't get to go see Victoria Falls because it was so there's so much water in high season that I was at. You couldn't see it. There's no point in going because you can't actually see the falls. It's better to go in low season. And the timing, when you're doing a trip, you have to pick and choose. When you're doing a trip over a year, you can't be everywhere at the best time. So yes, that was an adventure.
Being a total rookie at this, did you find a lot of how did you find out back then, 10 years ago, the internet wasn't what it was. Well, it was there, but it wasn't there, right? How did you find going from country to country and doing the border crossings and stuff like that? Like that must have been a real learning curve for each country.
Well, I had traveled a lot for work and I had done a lot of Asia, a lot of traveling. Like I did a bit of Europe or this is my, for job. So you'd be flying in, you got to figure out your way. But I'll tell you, it's a lot easier now. Like the internet didn't exist so much back then, like in such a handheld device. Like you didn't have mobile phones, iPhones didn't exist. You had flip phones and Nokias and there's no, coverage. And so you did have to really rely on the community as you were traveling. So as you're always meeting people and hey, you came from this way. What do you have is there any danger? Did you heard anything? And so there's this real overland wireless, everyone's talking to each other and we're telling each other okay, I came from this way and these guys are saying this. I can only tell you what I've heard, but this is what it is. And so border crossings were all just word of mouth. What do you do? My craziest border crossing, I'll tell you, was between Namibia and Botswana. And I stopped along the strip to fish in between. So I was fishing between borders, right? It was great. There's a bunch of us were fishing with these beautiful tiger fish. They were just good game. I was fishing for fun. So I was pulling them out and it was literally fishing. It was almost shooting in a bail because you just put a hook in and you pull it out. And I was throwing them back because it was just, I just want to, and the guy's like, why are you throwing those back? And I'm like, I don't know. I have nowhere to store them. I'm in this rig and I don't want to smell like fish. And he's like, no. He's like, bring them to me. And I'm like, okay. So I put them in a bucket and, from Northern Ontario, we know how to fish. So I brought him a bucket and I've never crossed the border so quick. I literally brought him like 5 fish and he opened my passport, didn't even look at it, just stamped it. He didn't check the trunk. He's like, you're good, man. You're good. And I'm like, okay. That was the weirdest border crossing I've ever seen. But you get those, that's the experience. And I think the internet may have killed some of that a little bit because you can be a little more independent and you rely on what people post. But it was a different.
Even Dan was saying that the same thing as you did about the overland community, that, the websites of the countries, they had little or no information, or there's things changing with the political world and the way it is. That things are constantly changing, and the most up-to-date information he was getting was from these other overlanders that are either going the other way or they're a day or two ahead of you, and you've met up at some time and they're texting back and forth. Hey, I just got through. This is what to do, kind of deal or whatever, right? So it's almost like the overland community knows more what's going on than the governments do.
Yeah. So. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had one instance where we were crossing from from Kenya into Ethiopia, and we couldn't get a visa. And we had literally just rocked up to the embassy, and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, we don't do visas that way anymore. You have to send your passport back to your home country, your issuing country, and get a visa from the embassy at your home country." And I'm like, "But I'm in Kenya. Like there's a logistical problem." And they had just changed it on us, and they said, "Oh, there's a family that just got through. They're the last ones that got it." And we're like, "Oh, great." So we had to courier our passports back to Canada.
No way.
Had friends actually take our passports. So we were actually passportless in Kenya for like 2.5, 3 weeks. And so we had to send our passports back by DHL. Luckily, I had some great friends. They ran our passports around, did all the stamping, did all the stickers, and then sent it back to us at I think it was Jungle Junction. I don't know if you ever heard of that. That's like in Kenya. It's like in Nairobi, one of the overlanding spots at the time. I don't know about today, but at the time, you could get sent in. And that was like really tough. And I'll tell you a funny coincidence is I actually ran into that family that got the last visa in Turkey. Yeah. Like I actually, we parked up next to them, and one of their kids invited us over he was 10, and he invited us over for pancakes. And we're just like, okay. Like, and
nobody can turn down pancakes, right?
That's right. Right. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, this is random, but let's try, like, we're open, right? Like, let's go see these people and hang out. They're overlanders. They're like, yeah, we've got this Toyota. Like, we just came from South Africa. We're like, you did? And so we started talking, and they were just a week ahead of us the whole way. We didn't meet them until Turkey. And I still talk to them today, actually. We have a really good, I think he's like 23, he's like 23 now. And he says he's going to come visit me here. So even if you're listening to me in this podcast, you got to come visit Canada.
So as much as I love talking about Africa and all that, I absolutely love it. But let's get back to Bucky the truck.
Yeah. Sorry. Lots of sidebars here.
I led you on down that rabbit hole, and we could end up talking about that all night long. So, but let's hop back to Bucky the truck. It's a very unique vehicle in Canada. Yeah. What the heck is it?
Okay. So it's an ex-UK military. It's called a 4-ton capacity truck, which is a lot like I think they're LMTVs in the States, or Stewart and Stevenson. So they got a very similar look. So they kind of have that, cab over look, and then a chassis, which has a flatbed on the back of it, which could be outfitted with ship carrier, water carrier.
It reminds me of like a Iveco or something like that. You see some of those.
Very similar. So it's called a DAF, Leyland DAF. Leyland being the British Leyland company that built cars all through, I don't know the total history, but I'm guessing 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. I believe they were bought out by DAF, and they built 5,000 trucks in between 88 and 96. And they went into service, and then they basically got taken out of service. They replaced the Bedfords, and then the DAFs came in between the 90s and early 2000s. And then they started going out of service in 2007 when they brought in the MANs, right? The Man Cats. They came in, and they're this current, service vehicle. But in 2007, no one knew what these vehicles were. They were super capable. They were like so abundant that they couldn't even get rid of them. So they're kind of trying to sell them off like really cheap. And no one really thought about making an overland vehicle. And there was like a couple people before me that made one that went around Africa. And I looked at it and said, that's a good idea. It's got a Cummins engine, which, I know that's one of your questions. It's got a Cummins 12 valve, beautiful engine. It's big tractor engine essentially. So it's like bulletproof. Yeah. And so I had a friend who built one, and he's like, yeah, you got to get one. And he was a good friend of mine, and he helped me get my truck and helped me build it. And we built it kind of together in a way.
So did you buy that in England?
Yeah. So I was actually living in England from 2007 to like 10 years ish.
Okay.
From 2007. And after the Africa trip, we went back to the UK. And oddly enough, I have this really strange story where I'm sitting in Namibia in the Hilux next to this family in this gigantic overland vehicle. And I was like, oh, that's a really crazy vehicle. I've never seen one like that. He's like, yeah, I built it in my backyard. Like, oh, you can't build this in your backyard. Oh, that's crazy. And it was him and his daughter. They had a teenage daughter that they were traveling with. And I was just like, I guess she was on a gap year or something. And I was was like, your family fits, it's a big truck and she gets her own room and you have your own room and you've got this and you have bathroom and you built it in your backyard. He's like, yeah, I just built it in my backyard. I'm like, no, you can't do that. That like in my head, I'm like, you can't do that. I'll never. And then obviously like a year and a half later, I'm like now thinking like, oh yeah, maybe you can build one of those things. Right. So I get back to the UK. I start like getting into the overland community, just knowing about, people know about my trip and I'm chatting like we were chatting and I start thinking, oh, well, I'd like another truck. And we're like, well, we're going to start a family, so the idea was like, we want something a little bigger because we had done the pickup with a rooftop tent and a cap and stuff like that. We wanted something that you could have the kids in. And so we thought, oh, let's try one of those trucks because, why not? And that's when the DAF came up and yeah, it's a bit convoluted, but yeah, we bought it in the UK. It's a UK military vehicle that came out of service in 2007. It's been on a few tours because when I cleaned it out, there's a lot of sand that came out of it. So you learn where it's been.
It's interesting. I had never heard of a DAF before. And I mean, I've heard of the Iveco. They're quite popular. Yeah. And your forward control Land Rovers.
Yeah.
There's lots of those around.
Yeah.
But this is the first time I heard of a DAF and I was like, what the heck is this thing? Right. So
yeah,
definitely a unique vehicle for sure. So
like DAF as a company make a lot of vehicles in Europe, like a lot of like transport type trucks where they have a lot of like cab over is kind of like the style in Europe. And DAF is I think a Belgian company and they make a lot of trucks. Like they are a very big brand in the world. DAF, not Leyland DAF. Leyland DAF was just for the UK military, like what I have. But DAF is a big company like Iveco, which Iveco I think is Italian. Is that right?
Yeah, it is.
Italian? Yeah.
So how big is it? Like it looks big in the pictures, but sometimes that can be a little deceiving. How does it compare to say like a Ford F-250 Super Duty kind of idea?
Well, funny enough, I have a buddy who's building a F-550 Super Duty Fummins. He's doing a build right now. I kind of like dabble in it with him. My truck, it is big. I'm not going to try and say downplay it at all. It's big. It's got big tires. I think it's mostly tall because width is, yes, it's the maximum width that can be on the road, which is like 2.5 meters or 8 feet-ish, something about that. Like I'm the legal limit, which is like a transport truck is kind of the width.
Okay.
An F-550 is actually not far off that. It's quite wide, especially when you start putting on big wheels and jack up the suspension. A crew cab, full box truck is like 22 feet from nose to tail. Yep. And actually 26, I'm going to say 27, just to give me a bit of space, 27 feet from the front nose to the back rear tire carrier. So it's big, but it's not, I don't find it that much longer. My wheelbase is very similar to that like let's call it a crew cab, regular box, which you don't see on the road that much, to be fair. Like that's a big truck,
right?
But it is a 4-meter wheelbase. And I find that like I can get that around most trails. Like I was out on trail with like kind of an Overland North crew. I know that we were talking about that earlier. We had a Jeep Gladiator, an FJ, 2 motorbikes, and an older Jeep. Excuse me, I don't know my Jeeps very well, but he had a modified Jeep and with like F-250 axles. And while I could not keep up with them because they have much nicer suspension and I have to cut trees down to get my rig through, I was still able to get it through all the trails, most of the trails that they were able to get to. And it's just slow going because you are moving a 10-ton truck, which is 22,000 pounds. That's one of your other questions, I think, is how heavy is it? So it's a big vehicle, like that's probably 4 times a regular vehicle. So a regular truck. So, and that's loaded.
Definitely a heavy vehicle for sure. It's a big vehicle. So it's a cab over, which is fairly straightforward. Incredible view when you're driving. And it's got to be different driving a cab over vehicle compared to a regular vehicle, right?
When you're driving straight down the road, it's I have a huge windscreen, so I get to, or windshield, sorry, windscreen, that's a very English thing. So a big windshield. And so yes, the view is really good. I can see right in front of me. It's mostly when you're going to turn and it's like a bus. You see the buses when they're turning and you see the driver and he's turning that big wheel and he's almost moving sideways. And you think you're going to hit something. Like I get out and check it like 3 times because I'm just like, God, there's no way I'm going to clear that. But like, actually, I still have like a foot, no problem. So the forward control really helps turning that truck around. And again, then the wheelbase, like I have no, like, I don't say no problems because it is a big vehicle. So you have to be careful and mindful, but generally it fits in most places. So
basically anywhere a full-size truck can go, you can go then pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much. I mean, there are places that it is high, right? So the truck is 11 foot, like, it's just a little under 12 feet. I use 12 feet as my bar. So if I see 12 feet, I'm good above 12 feet. If it's like 11.5, I'll be like, I better take this slow or air down so I can get through it. But most things I can get through. And like I said, when I was on trail, I had like a pole saw and a chainsaw, and I would have to clear some brush. That's just the sins of having a big truck, right? So
for our listeners, it's basically a cab forward design, and then you've got a camper shell on the back.
Correct.
Kind of idea, right? Yeah. So being a cab forward is where do the kids sit? Like it looks like there probably is room just from the pictures I have seen to sit up front with you guys, but is it a tight fit up front with the kids or?
Yeah, it's tight. Like a full grown adult is tight. Like I could fit back there, but I wouldn't want to travel much longer. Like
a little extra cab kind of idea.
Very much. They're like, basically what I installed was jump seats from a Land Rover.
Right. Okay.
Land Rover like 110. They had little seats that come down in the back, and I installed those in the back there, and they're good for the kids. Like my daughter, I just measured, she's like 57 inches tall. So she's getting to the limit of where she's comfortable in there. And then there's seats and seat belts in the back. So when they're old enough to like kind of be by themselves, I can still hear them, but I can't see them. They can sit in the back.
Right. And that's a walkthrough between your cab and your camper shell. Is this
more of a crawl through? Yeah. I wish it was a walkthrough, but it's more of a crawl through, like,
okay.
Yeah. It's just geometry wasn't on my side for like the cab size. It has a very small like front cab actually for the size of truck it is. Like if you had a MAN or a Mercedes, they have much taller cabs. I have a great photo. Like I've had a few visitors here on my property in Ottawa, and like some Unicats. I don't know if you've heard of Unicat, but that's the really high end vehicles, Overland vehicles, and they're quite large. He's a big Mercedes or big MAN, sorry. And you can see how much taller his cab is than mine. And he has more room to go through the back. I just don't have that space. Yeah. So it's a crossover.
Yeah. So basically, for lack of better terms and something for our readers, I mean, obviously they can go to your Instagram at Bucky Overland on Instagram and see some more photos, but it almost sort of looks like a Mercedes Unimog kind of idea.
I always tell, like a lot of people say that, and I always tell people it's a poor man's Unimog. The Unimog is so expensive. Like just the chassis alone is like, the old ones still cost you $100,000, right? So, these DAFs are a lot cheaper, a lot more reasonable, a lot more attainable, for like kind of a, regular guy like me. And I'm just a regular Joe, I built my own vehicle. I couldn't afford buying a Unicat. They're so expensive. So no doubt.
So I was thinking, like you spoke a little bit about the crawl space inside, but how does it look like? Like how's it set up inside? And can you just give us like a little walk around as how it would look like? And we will throw up some pictures and videos on our YouTube channel. So
I'm
really can see it there.
I'm really bad at giving inside videos for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just because I'm always like in it and living in it. There's like kids like toys around and things hanging and stuff. So what I'll try and do for you is for this purpose is do a little bit of a walkthrough as I'm talking it through so you can kind of see. So if you come through the pull out steps, so I pull out the steps, they come out of the side, they're slide out steps. I don't know. It's hard to show you.
Side?
On the passenger side, yes. I bought a left-hand drive vehicle because I knew I was going to import it back to Canada at some point. And they had some variants, obviously, for the military that travel, right? So I was able to secure a left-hand drive vehicle. So it's the proper side for here, which is nice.
Yeah, that's good.
So it's on the passenger side, and I have these stairs that fold out. And once you walk up the stairs, you go in the main man door, which is, it's skinny. I'm not going to say it's a full-size door. But to the right is for the eating area. There's like a table and room for like 4 comfortably. I have these special seat posts that I can stick in, and I can have 6 people sit around the table. And that table will then actually collapse down and make a bed, like a double bed. We always built it with the intention of not ever having to change your beds. We always wanted fixed beds because when you're on the road, you really don't want to be like changing your table down every night because it gets tiresome. But I wanted to have it just in case we had guests or emergency. Some people get cold and it's, have them inside. So, which it's become kind of a shelter on some trips for some people. But anyway, as we go through, you'll see that I have a 160 liter fridge, which is pretty big for overland rig. I have an oven. I have all the controls. You can see all my controls for my heating and air conditioning. Stereo is all in that area when you're moving to the left. The bathroom is between the kitchen and the bed areas. And there's a door which leads to a wet bathroom. So it's just like, like everything gets wet in there if you shower. We figured we weren't going to spend a lot of our time in there, and we just want to you have to sacrifice something, right? So, but it's worked well for me and us as a family. So, and then when you move to the back, you'll see there's a full double bed and 2 full bunks. So they're actually full singles and a full double. And that was important to us so that when the kids grow, that they're not going to outgrow the bunk. So that, an adult can sleep back there. The other week, I was telling you that we were out with the Overland crew, and, Luke from Overland North was sleeping in the bottom bunk one night because he's on his bike.
He's not a small guy either.
He's not a small guy. No. But I didn't make him sleep in the bottom bunk because I don't know the rating for the top one. So I was like, I'll probably just put you in the bottom bunk. But yeah, so he was in there, and we had a good time. It was part of the adventure, we got in late somewhere, and it just was easy for him to jump in the truck and set up a tent in the middle of the night. So, and then I've got the kitchen, which has a 3-burner gas stove, or gas hobs, I guess they call them in the UK, but gas stoves, burners, and then a sink. And then I'll show you the leaves that I have that fold up that kind of double your work surface area, so you can see. So I know it's hard imagining it without.
Yeah, I'm picturing it. Yeah. I'm picturing it. I'm getting it. I'm getting the vibe.
But I'll do a walkthrough so you can see, and I'll try to match it to this audio so you can kind of go and I can show you what it looks like. So
yeah, appreciate that. Yeah. It is hard to explain, over audio for sure. Yeah. So, but it gives us a rough idea. So how long is that camper shell?
It is 5 meters long. So I built it in Europe, and it's all metric. So it is 5 meters long from end to end.
End to end.
So whatever the conversion is, my brain's not working to this late right now, but it's all good. It's like 18 something feet.
Yeah.
So it's not that big. I mean, you got a lot of campers that are much bigger than 18 feet or 20 feet, right? I think one of the reactions I get is like, oh, I thought it'd be bigger in here. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I mean, I do have kind of like 4 feet of ground clearance though, right? Like you gotta, it's not, it's just everything starts so much higher, right?
Right.
So we talked about weight earlier. How much does this thing weigh?
It's 22,000 pounds. So 10 tons.
Oh
yeah. So on the road, if I'm actually I weighed it at a weigh station in Quebec the other week when I was going on a trip, fully gassed, full water, full family, full gear, all the paddle boards, all the toys, all the food. And I came in at 10,300 kilos. So just over 10 tons. And that's still under my gross vehicle weight. And then sometimes I tow a vehicle, like a 4x4. So I'll tow I want to tow a Bronco, a Jeep, or, a little Suzuki
sidekick or something.
Right? Then I'll tow a vehicle behind, because that's once you get where you're going, you can,
zoom
and it
around.
doesn't affect my fuel economy ever. So
I was going to ask you that next. I was going to ask that question next. What is the fuel mileage on Bucky the truck?
Okay. So what's hilarious is I thought that would be the first question, because that's the first question I get, especially when I meet people. They're like, what's the fuel economy on that? And I get about 21, 22 liters per 100, which is actually not that bad for a vehicle like that.
For the size of the vehicle, that's actually not that bad.
Yeah. So I get pretty much your typical 10.5 to 11 miles per gallon, which I'm not going to say is great, but for the size of vehicle and for like it being literally a brick, I know the joke of a Jeep is a brick going through the air. Well, this is literally, I literally have a flat face and a box. So it's literally a brick.
It's a box.
Yeah. I mean, I only travel at like 95 kilometers an hour on the highway. And then I try and stick to back roads at like, more like 80. And I do the speed, like right at the speed limit or just under because it's a big truck. It's pretty bouncy. The suspension is, it is military. And yeah, I get really good fuel mileage. If I like travel at like say 100 and 100, like I went to Texas once and I traveled like at 103 just because I wanted to get down there.
Yeah.
I was burning more like 28, 30 liters per 100. It was ridiculous. Yeah. It was because it almost watched the fuel gauge go down.
Yeah.
So like there's a huge difference between like 95, which is where the engine's kind of like at its like happy place.
Yeah.
In terms of gearing. And like 105. So that 10 kilometers an hour difference makes a huge difference for me. So yeah, it's not bad. How's this on the trip that we did to Quebec? I actually got the same fuel mileage as the modified Jeep. So I don't know.
Like saying that, I'm like, I'm hitting 16.8 right now.
Yeah. I mean,
Jeep.
Yeah. And I mean, he had like, I think he had like 37s on F250 axles. Like they're like, he was heavily modified Jeep. So with whatever gearing, I'm not sure what gearing he has in there. Forgive me, Robin, for not knowing.
What engine is it?
So it's a Cummins 12 valve.
Okay.
Yeah. Old Cummins 12 valve. The ones that you'd probably find in early 90s Dodge trucks. Like the Cummins. Yeah. Same engine. They're so bulletproof. Simple. It's got a big Spicer transmission on it, which is just overbuilt and like super tough. Same with the axles. There's no portal axles. I know that's one of the questions. And I get that asked all the time because it's no portal axles. Like, I mean, I kind of wish sometimes because they're cool, but it has just really beefy, typical axles, like big truck axles.
You mentioned the tires earlier and you said something around 50 inches. Is that right?
Yeah. So they're officially, I mean, they're metric. It's 14 R20. And that works out to be 49.5 something inches in diameter. So I kind of round to 50 because why not? So yeah, there's not many RVs that have 50s on the.
Here, Tricia thought she had big tires with a new 35 she just bought.
baby tires.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was with the Overland Nomad, Dylan. He has a nice Gladiator done up and he just put on 37s, I think, for the trip. And we rolled up next to me, just like, there's still oh my gosh. Yeah. We joked. He took a good photo and there's like this, like a baby Jeep and a big truck. And yeah, I think he posted something. He said, "I'll look up to you, Dad," or something like that. Yeah. We had a good time. We had a really good time with Dylan and the crew.
That's awesome. So it is a different vehicle in Canada, obviously.
Yeah.
What's it like to get parts?
So a 12 valve.
I mean, the 12 valve is everywhere, right? So
that's everywhere. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the drivetrain is pretty truck-like, so you can get a lot of truck parts. So like, there's a lot of cross-reference with like drive axle, U-joints, and even the diffs and all the airline stuff is truck. So you can get parts kind of like at your local truck stop. You have to be creative because it's either going to be metric or maybe sometimes it's a little different, but you may have to splice or whatever, but you'll find something. Where it gets tough is body parts, like windshield. I cannot buy a windshield in North America, so I have to ship a windshield, which you can imagine is like nerve-wracking trying to ship a windshield across the ocean. Not that I've had to do it yet. I've just known people who have, and he had to do it. And it was, it's amazing that it's got to come from Europe because they just don't make that truck here. And then recently for me, I had some RV parts, like the living parts break on me, and they were European. So trying to find someone who would A, ship to me and B, ship for a good price was very tough. Usually you have to like find somebody, and I got friends there, and they'll ship to them and then they'll ship to me. So yeah, just recently there's a couple small things that broke that I've had the truck on the road now for like 8 years now. So, I mean, it's been working every year, and, summer, winter, fall, like I've been using it. And so, it's life cycle, and trying to find parts is in that regards a little bit painful just because a lot of stuff has to come from Europe. So,
but I guess with planning and even simple things like your oil changes and that are all going to be pretty basic because you're running that 12 valve Cummins and all the regular stuff.
Yeah, like a 12 valve, anything to do with the 12 valve, all the fuel, all the oil, even the fuel system in general, all the fuel pumps they're all easy. And then even like, the diffs are so overbuilt that like, as long as you take care of them and do your maintenance and put new diff oil in and swap it out and make sure that if you go on water, not that I go on water that deep very often, but if you go and do some off-roading, you actually check your diffs and your hubs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
These trucks are meant, someone told me they're like 1,000,000-mile trucks. They're meant to go 1,000,000 miles. Like as long as you do your maintenance on it, and I haven't had too many mechanical failure issues, small stuff, but nothing. It's been pretty reliable actually, knock on wood.
You mentioned air brakes. So you got your air brake license. I guess you have to have that.
Yeah. You have to have your GZ because believe it or not, I am registered as an RV. So I have a blue plate. I don't know if in Ontario, if you know what that means, but I don't have to, it's just like a big A class, right? The A classes are registered as not trucks or registered as RV. So they don't have to go through the same, which is weird in my opinion, that you don't have to go through the same safety protocols, safety inspections. Now, I personally do a lot of the inspections, or I take it to a mechanic every couple of years. I'll take it there and just say, hey, give it a once over. I want to make sure that it's okay. Right. Because that's just a personal thing. I want to make sure that the truck's running well because I'm not a heavy truck mechanic and there's only so much you can do in your driveway sometimes. Right. So I'll take it to a guy to look at it.
So what was the expression on his face the first time you took it to him?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny.
What is this?
Yeah. They're just like, what is that? Like the expressions you get are generally like, what is that? What I get a lot in the States is that a Diesel Brothers truck? I really have to watch Diesel Brothers because I honestly, apparently they built a truck and they asked me, I've been asked many times, is that the build that they did in Diesel Brothers? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. No, I built this myself. So yeah.
Well, I think that's something you had some questions on, Tricia, about where he's been and where he's going, right?
Yeah. Where are you going? What's your favorite? So what is your favorite trip so far that you've done? And are you planning to stay here, I guess, in Canada for the rest of the year? Or are you planning a big trip or?
I mean, always planning a big trip, right? Like that's life, I'd love to be off, doing South America or something, but current life situation keeps me kind of local. I'm doing lots of local trips with the kids, taking them out. They love camping. I mean, I know this sounds almost ridiculous, but like they just love going to like 20 minutes down the road to a KOA. I know that's almost like awful for a trip like this.
But that's like we talked about earlier, right? Like being a tourist in your own town. Lots of people, have great dreams of going to Tuktoyaktuk and stuff like that. And they'll spend so much time thinking about it, dreaming about it, but they never actually end up going out and exploring just even within an hour or two of their own town, right?
Yeah.
So
this year I'm going to be doing, like I think I mentioned earlier off before we got recording here was, families from kind of the Great Bruce area. And so I'm going to be doing a bit of a Southern Ontario trip. I'll qualify that because it's not across Ontario. That's a much bigger trip, but Southern Ontario, up to Tobermory, have a look over there, down to Lake Sauble, maybe Wasaga. It's kid stuff. It's kid centric. I want to take the kids, and I've got lots of family to visit. So it's going to be kind of, overlanding within my own province. That makes sense, which has lots of beautiful things.
So that is beautiful. I've been there so many times camping. It's just gorgeous there. Gorgeous.
Yeah. So we're planning to do that. Again, like I said, we did Swisher Loop, which is in, southern Quebec, which was it felt like you were miles away from anywhere and some pretty rough roads. Actually, I was shocked. And so we've done those kind of trips. My favorite trip though, I'll tell you, is probably that Texas trip. Like
Texas.
Yeah. I haven't done any, let's call it crazy overlanding, down to Africa with this trip, across the Silk Road or down to South America. That's a dream. That'd be great to do. But, taking it to Texas was really fun. A, the truck got its name. B, the kids loved it. I was there. I was actually down on a work trip working, and I was able to take the truck and camp next to the job site. It was actually easier than going to the hotel. It was like 40-minute drive to the hotel, but I could bring my truck, which they loved in Texas. And so I was like literally by the campsite and by the job site, the campsite next to the job site. And then we made a big trip of it coming home. So we did like, I think it's Mustang Island and down on the South Coast and like all the way up through Texas and then down into Indiana and over to the coast of like Virginia and then back all the way up there. And the kids had a great time. Like,
so good.
They love the fact that they could fly in the bottom and drive one way back home. As I transited down there and then they flew in and met me. But that's my favorite trip so far. Do I want to go somewhere else? Yeah, I'd love to be out in BC, out where you are, Wes. There's some great stuff out there. And
if you're able to go anywhere in Canada, where you'd want to go. And me, I'm torn between, obviously I love BC, but that whole East Coast keeps on drawing me to the East Coast as well too, right? So you're kind of in the middle. So you got the option to go in either way.
Yeah, I mean, East Coast is a lot more accessible. I mean, I can be kind of in, Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, between 12 and 16 hour drive, which is really not that much. Gosh, people in Europe just blows their mind when 14 hours. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's long. I'm not going to say it's not, but that's what you have to do, right? East Coast is beautiful. I have done it East Coast. When the truck got shipped to Canada, it came in through the port of Halifax. And so I actually had to go and pick it. I dropped off in Liverpool in UK, and then I flew over here into Canada and drove to Halifax. Yeah. Picked up the truck from Halifax and then drove home and did a little, let's call it a small tour with, the truck was packed full of gear. So it wasn't super overlandy, but it was still fun, and a good experience for the kids.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. BC is, it is, as I always say, you guys are on the wrong side of the Rockies, but BC, we are quite lucky, but all of Canada is beautiful, right? I mean, northern Saskatchewan, everybody, laughs about Saskatchewan and wheat fields. Northern Saskatchewan is beautiful. You get up in Tuktoyaktuk, up in the north, up in Northwest Territories and the Yukon and the East Coast. And we are just so lucky where we live.
We're lucky. We're lucky here.
We are super lucky. I think that it's great that we appreciate that. And anyone listening to this, it's like you said, Wes, you gotta be a tourist in your own country. I traveled, I don't know, like 40 countries before I actually traveled Canada, which is ridiculous, right? But it's been really nice, exploring, my country, my home in a cool truck and, in a bit of comfort, obviously, if we're going to go off road. And yeah, I think it's great that we take a moment and actually say what a great country this is and appreciate it because it is beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely pros and cons. I mean, we don't have drafts, but I mean,
yeah,
but we have the beavers and we have the moose and the elk and Rocky Mountain sheep and all that stuff. Right. So,
but I do dream of getting out. I dream about getting out west with the truck because I've seen other people with other rigs out there, and I was just like, oh, I'd love to do some of the back country stuff in BC. I bet you could really get lost, quote unquote, lost, and just enjoy nature. You know what I mean? We haven't talked about the specs much, but I think I was talking at an overland group here in Ontario, and they're like, oh, how much water are you carrying? I carry 50 liters. 80 liters, 80 liters is that's 200 pounds. And I'm like, guys, I carry 450 liters of water and I can filter, I've got a 3-stage filter that I can pull water out of. Yeah. So I want to go and get proper lost in BC somewhere, I find a lake or a stream, filter the water, fill up, it's I have enough that I can stay out. We have enough solar. A kilowatt of solar keeps us going. If we get a little bit of sun, it keeps the truck going almost indefinitely. I installed a lithium battery pack, which is the way, by the way, anyone in Overlanding, get a lithium. It's incredible. They're such great batteries. And I can run my air conditioning at night. I know that's ridiculous. Okay. I realize in Overlanding that's ridiculous, but I can sit and run my air conditioning at night for a few hours while it's hot. Say if you're in a heat wave and you just need to take a little bit off, get to sleep, shut it off in 3 hours, wake up in the morning, turn my hot water on. Again, I know I realize I'm being very, so I can turn the heat on for about an hour, which gives me enough heat just to keep the temperature up in the hot water tank. And then I'm fully charged by like 11 or 12 o'clock. So it's like, and then it starts again. And then maybe I'll turn the heater on or something like that to like, just keep it hot or something like that. So,
that's something I have to really learn more about. And that's one of the things I was really trying to hit up with, learn more at the BC Overland Rally was solar stuff. Because I actually I was telling Trisha off air, my battery after 3 days actually drained my fridge after 3 days drained my battery. So I know my battery's at the end of its life, but I also want to go to a lithium based house battery for my fridge and other things. Right. But solar is something I want to learn more about because I know absolutely nothing about it. So that is something, if anybody is listening that is a vendor or even not a vendor that knows a lot about solar, we want to have an episode all about solar panels and lithium batteries and all that. Because I know I want to get the guys from Red Bear Outdoors back on because I know they're getting right into that. They know quite a bit. But for
great.
Good guys. Red Bear is there. So definitely want to get Mike back on. And Mike and Matt, I believe it was on
Mike,
the
Matt, and
episode
Henry.
the other day. Mike, Matt, and Henry. Yeah. So, and I know they know lots about it, but I also, the more I know I have questions about lithium. So I know a lot of our listeners will have questions about lithium and solar and all that stuff too, right?
Last year at the gathering, I did a talk on building your own lithium battery. Yeah. So like I talked about how you can buy your own cells and put them together and use a BMS to put your cells together yourself. So you can buy off the shelf, which is perfectly okay. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, it's great and it's easy. But if you're a little bit DIY and want to save a bit, you can save a bit of money if you're willing to put some time into it. And you have to pay attention to it a little more. Like it's not as set it and forget it. Like you got to be a little more hands on. Like I can't remember the numbers, but it might have been 80 cents. If it was 80 cents a kilowatt, I was doing it for 8 cents a kilowatt. So like it was a lot different in scale.
Some of the guys and I were talking with, and that's one of the reasons I was actually late to one of the talks we're given on Sunday night. We're sitting around talking about that exact same thing. And one of the guys is saying, you can build your own. And he's like, I've got it all, the information saved in that. And I'm like you said, it was a lot less expensive. And it's something I want to learn more about. So I might hit you up for more information on that later on.
Yeah. I mean, I still have the PowerPoint if you want to see it. It's like, I put a PowerPoint and showed people and we built a battery. I actually bought it as I think Ian from Afraid Knots. If you met Tricia, if you met Ian from Afraid Knots, he wanted to build it. So he got there and he was like building the battery with me and we had a good time, demoing it. So I actually had some cells that people could put together themselves and touch it and feel it, which are now dead, by the way, which is funny. Too many demos. Too many demos and too many touching the wrong wires. They didn't last. So that wasn't Ian though. I'm not throwing Ian under the bus or anything. He did great. So,
but speaking of Ian from Afraid Not Ropes, he's probably one of the few guys that makes recovery equipment that will handle your vehicle.
He is probably one of the only guys that actually does it. That's properly rated for sure. Yes. Exactly. He makes some great equipment. Great equipment. Yes.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I've seen some of his ropes because he does a lot for, I've seen
tractors,
tractors and exactly. Right.
So, he's got some serious ropes.
Little plug out there for you from Afraid Not Ropes. Great guy.
There you go.
And really good product as well too.
Yeah.
He was on a guest on our show. Oh man. It was probably last fall, Christmas, something like that. He came on and just super nice guy and just super knowledgeable. And
I only get to see him at shows generally. I've met him at obviously the gatherings and other Overland North stuff. And then I saw him at the Sportsman show. I was at the Sportsman show with Overland North at the hall there. And I got to know him well there. So we had a good time.
So going back to your rig, another question that's popped up for me. Sure. Do you guys, when you guys have kids and stuff like that, are you guys bringing kayaks and stuff like that along? Are you throwing them on your roof, or are you guys just sort of chill without that stuff?
So if you look at the truck, the way that it's built is there's a tire carrier on the back, and you'll see a silver box looking thing that looks like it's kind of part of the body. That's actually a separate storage container, which gets lowered down by a winch so that I can get because the tire is probably like, I don't know, 8 feet, 10 feet in the air, not 10 feet, 8 feet in the air. And to get it down, I actually have to lower it with a winch. But at the same time, I've got like, I think it's 8 feet wide by like, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet tall, and it's a couple feet deep. So I'm able to put like all the paddle boards in there, all the wet gear, all the stuff that you don't want to like bring indoors or in your lockers. And so, so I put all that stuff in there. I have like firewood in there and like recovered gear and stuff like that sits in there. And that just goes away, and no one can access it unless they can get inside and lower it. So it's kind of like pretty secure. Yeah. So we bring toys, mostly paddle boards.
Easy to blow up, right? So
yeah, it's fine. I've got onboard air, so it's easy to blow up when you have onboard air. Steal some from there. But yeah, like we're obviously kids' bikes, paddle boards. Those are the kind of things that we usually bring. Bikes are great because obviously once you park up, if you can go cycling, you can get to most stuff by cycling. And it's green, and the idea eventually is to get an electric bike. So you can charge off the solar, charge while you're driving. And then you have a fully charged bike by the time you get to where you're going, right? So
I know the kids love the bikes, right? Riding the bikes around the campgrounds and stuff like that they love it. So
they love it.
Do you mostly do solo trips, or do you hang out with other big rigs? But I think you kind of touched on about that, your crew that you kind of go overlanding with or off-roading with.
It's kind of go off-roading. There's not a lot of big rigs in Ontario. There is some, but like, the community just isn't as robust. I think there's more in Quebec. I've personally found more in Quebec, which I've tried to bring to the shows in Ontario if we can, just to build the community and get like to tell. It's like I didn't know it was possible until I met those people in Namibia, right? Yeah. Right. And so now I know it's possible. I've done it. I like to show people that it's possible. You can build a rig like this if there's an effort, obviously a dedication and investment, but it's possible. And, not that I don't like Jeeps, not that I don't like, pickup trucks and like FJs and Forerunners. Forerunners are beautiful. But you can do it. And so I just don't have anyone that's local to me that can. So I have to be pretty careful in what I do, because if I get a 10-ton truck stuck, it's not super easy to recover. Oh. Now, here's a plug for Ian at Afraid Not Ropes. I have been recovered, and I'll show you. I sent you a picture. I was up to my axle and my blockers in mud, and I was recovered by a 1-ton with just a lot of energy, a lot of like kinetic rope energy. Yeah. And he was just getting a wind up, and like he was getting thrown around, and then he just moved me like a couple inches each time. And then I was able to like chuck my way out of the mud. And even on the Swisher Loop, I was recovered by a little FJ. Like I just needed just that little bit extra. I slid off the trail a little bit because it was really narrow at one spot. And there's a bit of a ravine. Sounds dramatic, but there was definitely like the grade of a hill. And I raided up front. I'm like, guys, just need a little help. And Miguel, he reversed all the way back up the trail. He was well ahead of me, I think. And he reversed all the way back. And I was like, here's my kinetic rope. Let's give this a try. So I put down my recovery ladder, my sand ladder, and hooked it up to him. I'm like, just give her, see what happens. And he said inside of his truck, all of his stuff, just because it gets stopped. All of his stuff, like, I didn't realize all my stuff, it just like comes forward. So all the stuff shifted, and I was like, I appreciate, I owe you a beer for that one. But he got me out. So like it goes to show you that you can use those kinetic ropes to get. I should have filmed it because it would have been great. It would have been great promo video, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
So to answer your question, I don't get to travel with trucks too much because there's not as many around at the moment. So hopefully we change that.
Change that and just like you said, go to events and just bring it to the community. And I'm sure like all off-road community, it's something new, something people can see, learn about.
Yeah. Different.
Well, it's something different, right? That's the thing. So hopefully there can be some more out of at the rally in Muskoka. I'm
going to try and get some from the rally. I know, like I tend to talk to people online who have trucks from Europe, and they usually come through like Ottawa, Ontario, like, they come through Toronto, like they kind of come that route.
Yeah.
And we almost had it at the gathering, some people from like Netherlands, and like, it's just timing has to work out. Like it can't stick around too long if they're not in the right place. But yeah, there's a lot of Europeans that come through and yeah,
it'll be interesting.
Hopefully we can get more people to the gathering. No, the rally in September.
The rally.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, that's right. Cool. Awesome.
So our last question that we ask every guest is, what Canadian would you like to listen on the Canada podcast?
Which Canadian, or what do you want to hear more of? Sorry, I was trying to understand that.
Sure.
Which Canadian would you like to listen to in the 4x4 Canada podcast?
Which Canadians? Well, you've already had Ian from Afraid Not Ropes on, so like he's already come on. He's a riot. He's such a great guy. And you've already had, I don't know, have you done a dedicated Overland North one other than the event?
Yes, I had two of the guys on in the springtime.
Okay,
and
it was Luke.
Chris, that's what it was.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah. We already had those guys. Those are some of my favorite guys there. So let's see. You know who's really I find interesting is I spent a lot of time like just recently with Overland Nomad. I got to know him this year, and so if you're looking for someone to Overland Nomad, Dylan, he's built a Gladiator really extensively, and it's kind of interesting listening to his journey because he was a couple and they have a baby, so they have to like, we got to move like this like inverter to like put the baby seat in, and like I kind of know those struggles, like, and so anyway, it's just, yeah. So if I was going to pick that, then
great suggestion. And that's one of the reasons we asked it of everybody, because there's so many people all across Canada that we don't personally know, or that we haven't personally heard of. Right.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons that we ask this, is so that we can, learn more people that other, listeners may be interested in hearing. So
yeah. There's another, I'll put one more in there in the hat. You can edit this out, or you can do what you want. I don't know. I met them at the Toronto Sportsman Show. Off-grid trailers, they're out your way. They're out your way. Yeah. So I got to know Denny and
this weekend.
Oh, were you there? So like those guys, personally, I actually really like a small trailer on the back of a rig. I know I have a big rig and I do all that, but I like for small, short trips, I find it just so like alluring. Like there's such a draw for me to have this like really compact trailer for like a nice summer warm trip to the lake. Like I don't need to bring my big truck out there, which I know, like I love the truck. It's great. I'm not going to say anything bad about it, but if you're going to go for a weekend, there's like quite a lot to get ready. It's a big rig that needs like a lot of attention, right? A trailer would be nice. And so I found that the guys at Off Grid they knew their stuff. The product was quality. I know I was parked literally like 2 bays over, and I was just like, I think I was telling Denny like, I'm going to build one of these. I want to build one. And then he's kind of like, okay, like, so it was, well, yeah. And then
their
I got to know
great. Yeah. Their product is great people. It's like a, for Trish, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it's like a teardrop trailer, kind of 4x4 or an off-road teardrop trailer. And quality is, top notch. I'd put it up against any, teardrop off-road style trailer in North America, maybe even, including those in Australia as well, too.
I'd say the world. Yeah. These guys, they got great suspension, fully built, like fully metal construction. I got to see it up close. I was playing around with it and jumping inside it and looking at it and talking to Denny, talking to Chris, and just like, these are great trailers. Like I really see the value in this, there's a lot to say in that. So those are people, if you haven't had them on before, they'd be great to.
They are on the list for sure. And a quick side story about them. At the BC Off-Road Rally, I was sitting right behind them on Saturday night, and I'm sitting there with Dave from the Alberta Outdoor Expo, and he makes the Youth Pack campers and that, but we're sitting right behind the folks from Off Grid Trailers. And across the way was a friend of mine, and him and his daughter, Hannah. And anyways, one of the door prizes was a hat, a t-shirt, and a mug from Off Grid Trailers. Hannah happened to win it, and she's 12, I think. And she jumped up and down. She was screaming. She was dancing. She was doing everything. And the people from Off Grid Trailers, that just made their night. They were so excited that somebody was so excited to win just a t-shirt, right? Kind of. And Hannah was like, I was talking to her after because I ended up camping with them that night. And she's like, I didn't even know what it was. I was just so excited to win something. And like, well, you know what? Your excitement just totally made their night. So it just goes to show if you guys do win something out of the event, you know, even if it's a hat or something like that, that little bit of excitement just makes it worthwhile for the people that are donating all these gifts. I mean, obviously, if it's a, you know, iCamper rooftop tent, I'm going to be jumping up and down and yelling and screaming as well, too, right? But I didn't win that, unfortunately. But this goes to show that, you know, just those little things like that just make these vendors, you know, just totally made their night. They were so happy that she was so happy to win this t-shirt and a mug and the hat, right?
Well, it was probably really genuine, you know, like she's probably like, you know, super genuine. Like they're just, you know, they're at every show, or not every show, but they're at show week in, week out. They're doing shows, they're meeting lots of people. And it's nice to see, like, when you sell something to somebody, or, you know, sell it and they genuinely enjoy it, or they win a product, they win a sticker or a hat and they just genuinely enjoy it. You're making someone's day. So it makes everyone happy, right? So
it was funny. One of the ladies, she's like, well, it's a large hat, so she'll probably give it to her dad. And I go back and, you know, Hannah's wearing it and she's like, my dad ain't getting this.
Right.
But yeah, it was really neat. So, you know, if you guys do win something as a door prize, show some enthusiasm and excitement, because it is, you know, these vendors are giving it out of their back pocket, right? So a little bit of enthusiasm, it just can totally make their night too as well. So that's my final thought of the night.
There you go. Perfect. Good thought. Good way to finish.
Exactly. Awesome. Cool, Nick. I really appreciate you coming on board. And I know it's late over there for both you and Trisha. It's super late over there. Sorry, guys. But once again, we're talking to Nick from Bucky Overland on Instagram. And go over and check him out. Really unique rig. And I think we had a great conversation tonight. And, you know.
Yeah, it's quite a lot, though. I don't know if you're going to be able to fit it into. You have to cut a lot of my jabber out. But
sometimes it's hard to edit it out. And sometimes it just works that way, right? Sometimes it ends up being longer than what I expect it to. Yeah. But I mean, I kind of brought that Africa stuff on board because that kind of really intrigued me, right? So.
It's a different trip. Like I don't think there's a lot of Canadians that have done that. Like I didn't meet a lot of Canadians on the road when I was there, and I don't hear too many. It's very European, African based travelers there. So
and I think our listeners are really going to enjoy that part. I think they're going to enjoy everything about this whole episode, but the Africa thing just really intrigued me. So it's mine.
It's a pretty epic trip.
So we'll talk what we want to.
Exactly. There you go. Yeah. You're the masters of the podcast. You do what you want to do. I can't wait to meet you guys in person, because I'm definitely trying to get out west at some point. Even if it's not in my rig, I am going to try and get out there at some point. And Trish, you're just down the road. So like, I'm literally in Toronto. I'm going to be passing through Toronto in like a week. So, or 2 weeks. Or if you get to the rally, I'm trying my best to get there. I've got a skydiving event the week before, or the week of.
We totally missed out on that too, didn't we? You are a skydiver as well.
That's okay. Yeah. That's okay. Yeah, no, it's fine. You know, when you do something at the rally, I'm going to try and get a lift to altitude and fly and land in the middle of the rally, because it's an old airstrip, right? So they
it's old airstrip. Yeah,
that's perfect.
Oh my God,
see what you can do.
Have to be there and get down video. 100%.
If I can, I want to do that. There's a few logistical things you got to deal with, but that
would be cool.
It should be it goes great. Like Overland. I love overlanding. I'm so like. I love that it's taken off here in North America, and like it's becoming a thing, and it's really getting like energy behind it. You know, like 10 years ago, SEMA didn't have an overlanding section. You know, 7 years ago, I'm not even sure it had it, but like this is like it's coming. Like it's here. Actually, it's not coming. It's here. You know, like.
Do you think it's going to stay, or do you think it's another fad like neon light covers and chrome roll bars?
You know, if people like that do these shows do it any justice, it's not going to be a fad, because people will understand that it is a lifestyle thing, and it's like adventure, and it's not about your rig. You know, like I love to, like, people talk about this rig, and I know this podcast is about my rig, and that's how you know me. But like, I try and stress that, like, you know, like being on a bicycle is overlanding. Like you can do it on anything. And I don't want to be platform snob because I think that you can do it on anything. I've met lots of people from bikers to motorcyclists to like, people in Jeeps, like it's, or Land Cruisers, like there's just loads of like different platforms out there. And, that's one thing I was thinking is like, my aim when I talk about overlanding is to try and stay away from the wheeling side of it. Like wheeling is part of it, but wheeling is like not the end goal. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, for me, it's about getting to the lake and setting up and having that like, that like atmosphere and like that aloneness. And if I have to go through some rocky stuff and I have to do a little bit of, sand, that's part of the adventure. But I don't want to just go out there and beat up my rig for nothing, maybe to learn. That's one thing.
Yeah.
But like, when we did Swisha, like it was, sorry if I'm carrying on here, guys, but when I did Swisha, it was so much fun and it was so rough. Like my back was sore for days. Like the suspension, I don't have, I got to ride one day with everybody else. Like I parked my rig and we were doing like a small short trail. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is like floating. Like guys, it aired down, nice suspension, and like Dylan, he's just like, oh, I think I'm going to like, he presses the button. He can change his air from his LCD screen. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's so amazing. He's like, I think I'm going to pick like 18 PSI. Oh, maybe 15. Well, I'll try 12. And I'm like, oh my God, like that's so amazing.
I hate you.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, let's just say I really rubbed it in when I'm like, I'm going to have my shower and I'm going to have my
turn on my AC
tonight. Like I have to rub it in that way, like.
Yeah. But I think overlanding that's one interesting thing about overlanding is it means something different to every person.
Yeah.
And you see online, everybody, people argue what overlanding means. I mean, I don't care what you think of it and I don't care what you think of it, Tricia, as long I have my personal say on it, as long as we enjoy it, what it is. And, we all have a different terminology or different thoughts on it. And it doesn't really matter what the other person thinks of it. It is what you think of it. And as long as you enjoy doing it.
Yeah. And I think you're just respectful of everybody doing their thing because everybody has their own thing. I totally like people who want to wheel, want to do that. I just, again, my definition is the adventure of travel over land. Like it's not taking a plane. It's overland travel, whether you're doing it.
Well, a plane goes over land too.
Well, you're not really on land though, but you're way over land. I don't know. I guess that's true. Way overland.
But yeah, no, I know what you mean. But yeah, that's the one thing, like I say, it can mean different things, different people. And I think as long as you, like you said, you're respectful of what other people think and just go out there and have fun and enjoy it and be safe, be environmentally conscious, in regards to tread lightly and stuff like that. And just go out there and have fun and enjoy it. So
yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's great. Like just, and I don't think it's here as a fad. I think it's here to stay. I think it's caught on and you've seen in Australia, you've seen in South Africa and in Europe. Like Europe is still quite big into overlanding. I think we're just a little behind. We're just not as informed or the culture wasn't there, but it's coming. And I can see such a difference in the last, since I moved back to Canada, it's just exploded. Like, what overlanding did, I don't even know was a real term here until I got like, when I came back, I was like, overlanding, oh, what's overlanding? And then like, by 20, it was like, it's starting to become a thing. And now it just becomes a new lifestyle. So.
Yeah, I think it's just another way for people to get outside and explore and enjoy the outdoors.
Yeah.
That's basically, what it boils down to. And that's why I do think it will last longer than chrome roll bars and line viewing lights, light covers, right? So.
Yeah, but all that stuff's going to come and go, right? Like, everyone's, all the gear is going to change and like that's, and then like you said, it's all about being outdoors and enjoying the adventure. So cool. Exactly. I don't want to talk your ear off any longer.
No, let's we'll wrap it up there. And once I want to thank you for coming on, Nick. And, we can reach you out at Bucky Overland on Instagram. And that's probably the best way. You got to check out this 4 control Overland rig. Absolutely awesome. And check out our YouTube. We'll have some videos of that up there, as well as our own Instagram. We'll share some photos and things like that on there as well, too. So our own Instagram at 444 Canada Podcast. And check out mine at Dirt Road Adventures on Instagram. And Trisha, you are at
redbeast_JL.
There we go. Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you guys staying up so late over there on the wrong side of the Rockies. Chat soon.
Okay,
Bye, Trish. Bye, Wes.
Bye.